Dylan, I'm always curious about how you find the humanity in a role like this when you're playing a serial killer. Obviously, we learn a lot about your character's backstory later on. Was that kind of your into finding the character, or how was it making him seem disturbed by the trauma he's undergone, but in a way that still felt human?
No, I think that was the fun of the character for me, right? Was reading the script and seeing how you can possibly get to a point of empathizing with a character like this, who's clearly doing these deplorable acts while also feeling justified through being driven back into a corner. And so, for me, I'm happy with the performance that we ended up with, and I think that a lot of that I can give credit to Josh for because you can only prepare so much before you get on set and you start working with your co-stars, right? I think a lot of that's feeling on set. A lot of that's workshopping it with your fellow co-star, and Josh made that really easy. He's been doing it forever, and he's a professional in every sense. So for me, it made it really easy to get there, and I was having fun doing it as well. Which I think, like when you watch movies, I can at least I do, but I can see when actors are at play in what they're doing
Mm,
versus when they're really struggling through their performances. And I felt like I was at play during this. So
that's great. I love that.
Yeah, and you definitely can see that in this film. And Joshua, there's such an interesting dynamic between you and Dylan in these scenes because he's sort of toying with your character. He's arrested because he wanted to be, and he has the information advantage. What did you find most intriguing about getting to play with that character dynamic where the police are definitely, on the opposite side than usual? They don't have the edge.
No, no, it's an interesting way to look at it. To think that he was, you know, starting the next phase of his life and gets drawn back into this because of something he didn't even realize he did years ago, was part of the reason I love this idea. And I don't love one of the things I love and hate about this job is that you're sort of forced to confront some really difficult things, some dark things at times, and to see what he'd done, not only these other kids, but also what he's done to my son, and what could happen if I don't find him, is something you don't want to think about as a parent. But it's also something that makes you appreciate your kids that much more, I guess. So I think Dylan said it perfectly. We just had a lot of fun. I love his approach to this. I love the way he played this character. Um, he's not this snively whiplash sort of bad guy. He's a really interesting and complicated and playful, I think is the perfect word for that. There was something really playful about what he did, which I didn't expect him to do, which made it a lot of fun. We just had a lot of fun making this movie. We shot it in like 15 days. So the pace was always fast, which I think helped me keep it, at a 10 the whole time.
Yeah, I love the interrogation scenes. Those are really fun. And Dylan, my last question: we see the kills in flashbacks, and it's not glamorized. There's a real grittiness to it and a realism to it. I mean, they're disturbing. You're cutting off a woman's ear. How is it filming those scenes? Because they don't go. They're obviously extreme, but they're not played like into the gore. They're very realistic.
I would actually give full credit of the performances in that scene, even though that we talked to it to actually my stunt double in it, who they actually filmed those scenes before I had arrived at a conflict of schedule, and they filmed because it was so heavy and action heavy. So I'm giving full credit to him for those kind of like gritty realism, even though that we talked about it and we talked about like the hallway scene in Old Boy, and we talked about like some of these scenes that are just like one of my biggest pet peeves is in like action scenes when you don't see an actor or a stunt double like pant or get tired. That's like one of my favorite things because like I don't anyone who's like hit a bag for 5 minutes knows how fucking exhausting it is. And, to me, when you're just like amped up and you're, in these scenes where you're seeing people throw each other and, beat the heck out of each other, or, try to kill each other. In some movies, you just go, wouldn't you be like exhausted after 5 minutes? But so we talked a little bit about that, and I'm glad you caught it. So
Yeah, yeah. Props to you for not taking credit for it too, and being honest. Thank you guys so much for your time today, and congrats on Neglected. I really enjoyed the film.